My husband called me useless and broke up with me just moments before I planned to announce my pregnancy. He said he deserved something better, but he had no idea what he'd just unleashed. My name is Rebecca, and I need to tell you about the night that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. 3 years ago, I met him at a coffee shop downtown. He was charming, funny, and made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. We moved in together after 8 months, and I genuinely believed we were building something real together. I had been planning this moment for weeks. My 27th birthday party seemed like the perfect opportunity to share the news that would change our lives forever. I had discovered I was pregnant just 5 days earlier, and the joy I felt was overwhelming. I imagined his face when I would tell him, surrounded by our closest friends, that we were going to be parents. The apartment looked perfect that evening. I had spent the entire day decorating with string lights and preparing his favorite dishes. Our friends started arriving around 7, and the energy was infectious. Everyone was laughing, drinking wine, and celebrating. I kept touching the small gift box in my pocket, the one containing the positive pregnancy test, and a tiny pair of baby shoes I had bought that afternoon. Around 9 o'clock, I decided it was time. My heart was racing as I asked everyone to gather in the living room. I was about to make the announcement that would mark the beginning of our new chapter as a family. But before I could speak, he stepped forward with a serious expression I had never seen before. "Actually, I have something to say first," he announced to the room. The conversation died down, and I smiled, thinking maybe he had planned a surprise of his own. Instead, he pulled out a small box and handed it to me. For a split second, my heart soared, thinking it might be an engagement ring. "Open it," he said coldly. Inside was a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, and the words hit me like a physical blow. "You're useless. I deserve better. This relationship is over. Don't contact me again." The room fell silent. I looked up at him in shock, but his expression was stone cold. "I can't do this anymore," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're holding me back, and I need someone who actually brings value to my life." I stood there, pregnant and humiliated, watching the man I loved walk out of our apartment and out of my life in front of 20 people. The gift box with the pregnancy announcement felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket. My best friend immediately rushed to my side, but I was too stunned to cry. The guests began leaving awkwardly, offering half-hearted apologies and promises to call later. Within an hour, the apartment that had been full of laughter and celebration was empty except for me and the decorations that now felt like a cruel joke. That night, I sat on our bed, staring at the positive pregnancy test I had planned to show him. I was 27 years old, pregnant, and completely alone. The irony wasn't lost on me that I had spent 3 years of my life with someone who could deliver such devastating cruelty with calculated precision. This wasn't a moment of anger or poor judgment. This was planned humiliation. I had no idea that this devastating moment would eventually become the catalyst for the strongest version of myself I had ever imagined. 3 days passed in a blur of tears and confusion. I called in sick to work, barely able to function beyond basic necessities. My best friend Sarah came over every evening, bringing groceries and sitting with me in silence when words felt impossible. She had witnessed the entire spectacle at my birthday party, and her protective anger was almost more intense than my own hurt. "I want to key his car," she muttered on the second night, pacing around my living room like a caged animal. "I want to post screenshots of his dating profiles online. I want to call his mother and tell her what a monster she raised." "He's on dating apps?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why this surprised me anymore. "Multiple ones," she confirmed grimly. I checked after the party. His profiles are all active, some with photos I recognize from when you two were together. This whole thing was planned, Rebecca. He didn't just wake up that morning and decide to leave you. He's been preparing his exit strategy for months. On Thursday morning, I finally found the courage to share the secret I had been carrying. "I'm pregnant," I whispered as she handed me a cup of tea. Her face went through a series of emotions before settling on protective anger that made her previous rage look mild. "That fucking bastard," she muttered. "How far along?" "About 6 weeks," I replied, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. "I was going to tell him at the party. Can you believe that? I actually thought he would be happy." She held my hand while I cried again, but this time felt different. This time I was crying not just for the loss of our relationship, but for the family I had imagined we would become. I was also crying for the woman I had been, someone so eager to please that she had ignored red flags that now seemed glaringly obvious. "You know what we're going to do?" Sarah said after my tears subsided. "We're going to figure out exactly what kind of person you were living with. because I have a feeling there's a lot more to discover. That afternoon, I decided I needed to understand what had really happened. Something about his sudden cruelty didn't add up with the man I thought I knew, though I was beginning to realize I had never actually known him at all. I started looking through papers and documents we had shared over the past 3 years. What I found made my stomach turn in ways that had nothing to do with morning sickness. Hidden in his desk drawer were credit card statements I had never seen before. Not just one or two, but an entire financial life I had been completely unaware of. Expensive dinners at restaurants we had never been to together, some costing more than I spent on groceries in a month. Hotel charges from weekends when he claimed to be visiting his college friends in other cities. Jewelry purchases that never made it to me, including a $3,000 necklace bought just 2 weeks ago. The most recent statement showed charges from just last week. A romantic dinner for 2 at the most expensive steakhouse in the city, the same night he told me he was working late on an important project. The bill was over $400, more than we had ever spent on a dinner together in 3 years of dating. My hands shook as I found his phone bill tucked between old magazines. Hundreds of texts and calls to a number I didn't recognize, all marked with the contact name M. The frequency had increased dramatically over the past 2 months, sometimes 20 or 30 messages in a single day. Some days he was texting this person more than he was texting me, but the phone records revealed something even more disturbing. Late-night calls that lasted for hours, placed after I had gone to bed believing he was working on his laptop beside me. Weekend calls made during times when he claimed to be running errands or meeting friends for drinks. A pattern of deception so comprehensive that it rewrote the entire history of our relationship. I felt like a detective uncovering evidence of my own life's lie. The man I had been living with, sharing meals with, making plans with, discussing our future with, had been living a completely separate reality. While I was planning our future and carrying his child, he was planning his escape and building a relationship with someone else. The most painful discovery came when I found a receipt from a jewelry store dated just 1 week before our breakup. It was for an expensive necklace with an engraving, "To M, all my love, forever yours." The realization that he had been buying romantic gifts for another woman while I was at home excited about our baby made me physically sick. I also found restaurant receipts that told a story of romance I had never experienced with him. Expensive bottles of wine, desserts ordered for 2, charges that indicated long, leisurely dinners. In 3 years together, he had never taken me to restaurants this nice, always claiming we needed to be more careful with money and save for our future together. That evening, I sat surrounded by evidence of his deception. Credit card bills, phone records, receipts, hotel confirmations, all proof that the last several months of our relationship had been a complete fabrication on his part. I wasn't just dealing with a sudden breakup. I was dealing with calculated, long-term betrayal by someone who had been living a double life while I planned our future. Sarah found me there when she arrived with dinner, papers scattered around me like the pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture I had been too naive to see. "What's all this?" she asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Proof that I never really knew him at all," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in days. For the first time since that horrible night, I felt something other than sadness. I felt angry, and that anger was starting to give me strength. "We need to figure out who M is," she said, picking up the phone bill, "and you need to decide what you're going to do with all this information." I looked down at my stomach, thinking about the tiny life growing inside me. This baby deserved better than a father who could walk away so callously. But more importantly, I deserved better than spending my life wondering what I had done wrong. The truth was harsh, but it was also liberating. I hadn't lost a loving partner. I had escaped from a liar and a manipulator. "I know exactly who M is," I said, reaching for my laptop. "And I know exactly what I'm going to do." It took me exactly 37 seconds to find her social media profiles. Michelle Chen, a marketing coordinator at a tech startup downtown. 25 years old, ambitious, and according to her recent posts, very much in a relationship with my boyfriend. Photos of romantic dinners, couples' weekend trips, and intimate moments that had been happening parallel to my own relationship. The timeline was devastating and clear. While I had been discussing moving in together permanently, she had been posting photos from weekend getaways with him. While I had been talking about our future, he had been building one with her. The necklace I had found the receipt for was prominently displayed in her most recent photo, along with a caption about the most thoughtful man in the world. "Look at this," I said, turning the laptop toward Sarah. "She has no idea I exist. Look at her posts. She thinks she's in an exclusive relationship with him." Sarah studied the screen, her anger building with each photo. "She has posts going back 4 months," she said. "Rebecca, this isn't just cheating. This is like he was living two completely separate lives. The next discovery was even more infuriating. Michelle had posted photos from my birthday party. Not photos with him since he had left so dramatically, but photos from earlier in the evening when she had apparently been there as a guest. I remembered her now, a friend of a friend who had seemed nice enough, making small talk with me about work and relationships while secretly sleeping with my boyfriend. She was there, I said, my voice barely controlled. She was at my party talking to me about how lucky I was to have such a supportive boyfriend, while she was sleeping with him behind my back. The level of deception was so comprehensive that it rewrote my understanding of the past several months. Every late night he claimed to be working. Every weekend trip he said was with college friends. Every time he had been distant or distracted. It all made sense now. He hadn't been building a life with me. He had been managing two relationships simultaneously until he decided which one to keep. I spent the next hour documenting everything. Screenshots of Michelle's social media posts, photos of the receipts and credit card statements, copies of the phone records. I was building a case, though I wasn't sure yet what I planned to do with it. "Are you going to confront her?" Sarah asked as I methodically saved evidence to a folder on my desktop. "I don't know yet," I replied, "but I'm going to make sure I have options." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and processing the full scope of what I had discovered. I hadn't just been dumped. I had been systematically deceived by someone who had no qualms about lying to my face for months while building a relationship with someone else. The cruelty of his departure wasn't just about ending our relationship. It was about humiliating me so thoroughly that I would be too devastated to investigate or fight back. But he had underestimated me. The humiliation that was supposed to destroy me was actually clarifying everything. I wasn't the problem in our relationship. I was the victim of someone who was fundamentally dishonest. And now I had proof. It took me 2 more days to gather the courage, but by Saturday morning, I knew I needed answers. Not just for closure, but for the practical matters that were about to become very real. I texted him to meet me at the coffee shop where we first met, claiming I had some of his belongings to return. Neutral territory felt safer for what I was about to do. He arrived 20 minutes late, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. His usual confident demeanor was replaced with something that looked almost like guilt, though I suspected it had more to do with being caught than with genuine remorse. He sat across from me, fidgeting with his phone and glancing toward the exit as if planning an escape route. "So," I said, placing the folder of evidence on the table between us, "I found some interesting things while cleaning out the apartment." His face went pale as he recognized the credit card statements and phone bills. For the first time in our entire relationship, he looked genuinely afraid. The confident mask he usually wore slipped completely, revealing someone who was much smaller and more pathetic than I had ever realized. "Rebecca, I can explain—" "Can you explain who M is?" I interrupted, sliding the phone bill toward him. "Because I did some research. Turns out it's not that hard to trace phone numbers these days. Social media makes everything so convenient." The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. I could see him calculating his options, trying to figure out how much I knew and what he could still lie about. Finally, he sighed and ran his hands through his hair. "It's Michelle," he admitted quietly. "Michelle Chen, marketing coordinator, 25 years old, currently wearing the $3,000 necklace you bought her last week?" I asked pleasantly. "The same Michelle who was at my birthday party, talking to me about what a great boyfriend you were while she was secretly sleeping with you?" His shocked expression told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't expected me to connect those dots, hadn't anticipated that I would be thorough in my investigation. He had counted on me being too devastated to dig deeper, too humiliated to fight back. "How long?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "About 4 months," he mumbled, still not looking at me directly. 4 months. That meant it started right around the time I had begun talking about taking our relationship to the next level, when I had started bringing up the possibility of engagement and marriage. While I was imagining our future, he was already planning his exit strategy with someone else. "And the money?" I asked, pointing to the credit card statements. "All those expensive dinners and hotels while you were telling me we needed to budget more carefully for our future together?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking like a child caught stealing from the cookie jar. "Look, I was going to tell you eventually. I just needed time to figure things out." "Figure what out exactly? How to string me along while you built a new life with her? How to keep 2 women interested while you decided which one was worth keeping?" For the first time, he looked directly at me, and I saw something in his eyes I had never noticed before. A coldness that made me realize I had never truly known this person at all. The mask was finally off, and underneath was someone capable of sustained deception and calculated cruelty. "You want the truth?" he said, his voice taking on an edge that was probably closer to his real personality than anything I had heard before. "Michelle gets it. She's ambitious, she's going places, she makes good money. She makes me want to be better. With you, I felt like I was just settling." The words should have hurt more than they did. But instead, they clarified everything. This wasn't about my inadequacy. It was about his character. A decent person would have ended our relationship before starting another one. A decent person wouldn't have humiliated me in front of our friends. A decent person wouldn't have let me continue believing in a future that he had already abandoned months ago. But then I realized something that made me smile for the first time in days. "Does Michelle know about the credit card debt?" I asked sweetly. "Because based on these statements, you're carrying about $15,000 in debt from your little romantic adventures. Does she know she's dating someone who's financially irresponsible? Does she know you were living with another woman while you were taking her on all those expensive dates?" His face went from pale to gray. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been financing your relationship with her by racking up credit card debt, and now you're going to have child support payments on top of that. I wonder how long your ambitious new girlfriend will stick around when she realizes what kind of financial mess she's getting involved with." "Child support?" he repeated, as if the words didn't make sense. "There's something else you should know," I said, my hand moving unconsciously to my stomach. "I'm pregnant." The color drained completely from his face. He gripped the edge of the table and stared at me in shock, and I could practically see his carefully constructed new life crumbling in real time. "What?" 6 weeks pregnant. I was planning to tell you at the party, actually. Right before you handed me that charming little note about how useless I am. He sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing this information. I could practically see his mind racing through the implications, calculating how this would affect his new life with Michelle, his finances, his carefully planned future. Are you sure it's mine?" he finally asked. The question was so insulting, so perfectly characteristic of the person I now realized he was, that I almost laughed. It was exactly the kind of thing someone would ask when they were looking for any possible way to escape responsibility for their actions. "Yes, I'm sure. But don't worry. I won't be expecting anything from you emotionally. Financially, however, that's a different story entirely." I stood up, gathering my things and the evidence I had brought. "My lawyer will be in touch about child support. Oh, and one more thing. I'll be keeping the apartment. Turns out the lease is only in my name, and I've been paying most of the rent anyway. You have until Sunday to get your things out." As I walked toward the door, he called after me, desperation clear in his voice. "Rebecca, wait. Maybe we can work something out. I mean, if you're pregnant." I turned back to look at him one last time, this man who had spent months lying to my face while planning his escape. "The time for working things out was before you decided I was useless. Before you decided to cheat. Before you decided to humiliate me in front of 20 people. The only thing we'll be working out now is how much you'll be paying in child support." Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Power. I wasn't just the victim of his betrayal anymore. I was taking control of my situation, and he was about to learn that his actions had consequences that extended far beyond my hurt feelings. The look of panic on his face as I left told me everything I needed to know. He had thought he was upgrading to a better life, but he was about to discover that his choices came with a price tag he hadn't anticipated. Michelle was about to learn that her perfect boyfriend came with significant baggage, and he was about to learn that treating people as disposable had financial consequences. For the first time since my birthday party, I felt like I was winning. Monday morning brought a new kind of clarity. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists and calculations like I was planning a business launch rather than a life overhaul. The first call I made was to a family law attorney whose name I found through an online search. "You're being smart to think ahead," she told me during our phone consultation. "Many women wait until after the baby is born, but planning now gives you more control over the situation. We can establish paternity immediately after birth and begin child support proceedings. Based on his income level, you're looking at roughly $400 to $500 monthly." The second call was to my landlord, confirming that I could handle the rent alone and requesting a lease renewal in my name only. The third was to my boss, explaining that I needed to discuss adjusting my work arrangement to accommodate single motherhood. She was surprisingly supportive and agreed to let me work from home 3 days a week. "We've been looking for ways to offer more flexible arrangements anyway," she said. "Your performance has always been excellent, and honestly, having someone working different hours could help us serve clients in different time zones." By Wednesday, I had restructured my entire budget. The financial planning revealed something interesting. I had been shouldering a much larger portion of our shared expenses than I remembered. Without him, my monthly budget actually had more room for savings than before. His contributions to rent and utilities had been minimal compared to what I was paying for groceries, household items, and most of our entertainment. Looking back at our bank statements, I realized that while I had been putting aside money for our future together, he had been spending every penny he earned on maintaining two relationships. The irony was perfect. I was financially better off without him, while he was about to take on significant new expenses. The legal consultation had been enlightening in ways I hadn't expected. My attorney explained that regardless of our relationship status, he would be legally responsible for child support once paternity was established. More importantly, she helped me understand my rights regarding custody and visitation arrangements. The key is to document everything, she advised. Keep records of all communications, save text messages, and maintain a clear record of his involvement or lack thereof. This will be important if you ever need to modify custody arrangements or support agreements. She also explained something that gave me considerable satisfaction. If he chose not to be involved in the child's life, it would actually make my situation simpler legally. No custody battles, no forced shared decision-making, no complicated visitation schedules. I would have complete control over raising my child while still receiving financial support. Sunday afternoon arrived with an unexpected sense of freedom. I had changed the locks Saturday evening and spent the weekend strategically removing any trace of him from the apartment. It felt like performing surgery on my own life, carefully excising the infected parts while preserving what was healthy and worth keeping. Sarah helped me box up his belongings, and we arranged them neatly on the front steps. When he arrived to collect them, I watched from the window as he loaded boxes into a friend's truck. He knocked on the door once, but I didn't answer. Everything that needed to be said had been said. This chapter was closed, and I was already writing the next one. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked as we watched him drive away. "Like taking out the trash," I replied, and I meant it. The following week settled into a routine that felt surprisingly manageable. Prenatal appointments, work projects, preparing the spare bedroom for a nursery. Sarah helped me paint the walls a soft yellow color, and we spent evenings planning furniture arrangements and making lists of baby supplies. "You know what I love about this?" she said one evening while we were assembling a crib. "You're not sitting around waiting for him to come back or hoping he'll change his mind. You're building something completely new." She was right. For the first time in 3 years, I was making decisions based entirely on what I wanted and needed, not on what would accommodate someone else's mood or schedule. It was liberating in a way I hadn't expected. I started receiving texts from him again around my 10th week of pregnancy. Not romantic overtures or attempts at reconciliation, but increasingly frantic messages about his deteriorating situation. "Michelle found out about the baby," one message read. "She's freaking out. Can we talk?" I ignored it, but the messages kept coming throughout the day. "She wants to know why you didn't tell her about us living together. She's asking about the credit card debt. Rebecca, please answer me. Everything is falling apart." I forwarded the messages to my attorney without responding. She handled all communication from that point forward, maintaining the legal boundaries I had established. It felt good to have a professional buffer between us, someone who could deal with his chaos while I focused on taking care of myself and my baby. "His personal problems aren't your responsibility," my attorney reminded me during one of our check-ins. "Your only concern is ensuring he meets his legal obligations to support this child." The legal proceedings moved faster than anticipated. My attorney served him with paternity and child support papers 6 weeks after our coffee shop confrontation. His response came through his lawyer: a request for a payment plan and a formal acknowledgement of paternity, without any request for visitation rights. "That's unusual," my attorney noted during our meeting. "Most fathers at least ask about some form of custody arrangement." "He's not interested in being a father," I explained. "He just wants to minimize the financial impact and move on with his life." "That actually makes things simpler legally," she replied. "We can establish a support order without having to negotiate visitation schedules or custody agreements. It's less complicated for everyone involved." Through mutual friends, I learned that his perfect new relationship was imploding exactly as I had predicted. Michelle had discovered not only his debt and his impending fatherhood, but also the extent of his deception about our living situation. She had thought he was casually dating when they met, not living with someone he had been in a serious relationship with for 3 years. "She kicked him out after a week," Sarah reported with obvious satisfaction. Apparently, she told him she didn't sign up to be involved with someone who had child support obligations and $15,000 in credit card debt. The news should have felt like sweet revenge, but instead, it just felt predictable. This was the natural consequence of someone who built relationships on lies and deception. Michelle had made a smart decision to protect herself from someone who had proven he was willing to manipulate and deceive people he claimed to care about. My phone buzzed with another message from him. Everything fell apart with Michelle. I know I screwed up. Can we try to work things out? I screenshot the message and sent it to my attorney. Please inform his lawyer that all communication should go through legal channels, I replied, and remind him that child support obligations don't disappear based on his relationship status. The second trimester brought new challenges but also new confidence. I had assembled a support network of friends, family, and healthcare providers who were invested in my success as a single mother. My prenatal classes were filled with couples, but I didn't feel out of place. If anything, I felt more prepared than many of them because I had already proven to myself that I could handle difficult situations independently. I learned the baby's gender at my 20-week ultrasound, a girl. Sitting in that darkened room, watching her tiny form on the monitor, I felt a fierce protectiveness and love that surprised me with its intensity. This little person was going to have a mother who valued honesty and integrity, who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved, who would teach her that real love was about respect and consistency, not dramatic gestures and empty promises. She's beautiful, the technician said, pointing out tiny hands and feet. She's perfect, I whispered, and I meant it. She was exactly what she was supposed to be, created from the ruins of something dishonest into something pure and hopeful. By my third trimester, I had created a life that was not only stable but genuinely fulfilling. My work-from-home arrangement was so successful that my boss offered me a promotion with additional remote responsibilities. The extra income meant I could save money for the baby's future and still maintain financial independence. You've really figured this out, my boss said during our monthly check-in call. Your productivity has actually increased since you started working from home more. Have you thought about making this permanent? The apartment that had once felt too expensive for one person now felt like the perfect size for a small family. I spent evenings reading in the nursery, imagining the life my daughter would have here. A life based on honesty and stability, where the adults in her world kept their promises and treated each other with respect. The child support payments began arriving during my 8th month of pregnancy, deposited automatically into an account I had set up specifically for child-related expenses. $450 monthly, exactly as the court had calculated. No communication, no drama, just the financial obligation being met as required by law. How does it feel, getting those payments? Sarah asked during one of her visits. Like justice, I replied simply. Not revenge, just consequences. He made choices, and now he gets to live with them for the next 18 years. I used the money practically, setting up the nursery, buying baby supplies, and starting a college savings fund. Every dollar he sent was an investment in our daughter's future, which felt like the perfect transformation of his obligation into something positive. Around this time, I started dating again, though very casually. The man I met, David, was a teacher who worked with special needs children. Our first conversation happened at a coffee shop when he noticed me reading a pregnancy book and asked if I was excited about becoming a mother. Very excited, I replied, though it's going to be just the two of us. Single parenting is tough, he said with genuine respect. My sister raised her daughter alone, and she's one of the strongest people I know. David's approach to my situation was refreshing. He didn't treat my pregnancy as a complication or ask probing questions about the father. He seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, and when I explained my circumstances, his response was perfect. You're building something important, he said during our second coffee date. Your daughter is lucky to have a mother who prioritizes what's right over what's easy. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally. He understood that my pregnancy and preparations for motherhood were my primary focus, and he never pressured me for more time or attention than I was able to give. When I was too tired for dinner dates, he would bring takeout to my apartment and help me assemble baby furniture. When I was stressed about work deadlines, he would quietly handle my laundry or grocery shopping without being asked. You don't have to take care of me, I told him one evening as he folded tiny baby clothes while I worked on my laptop. I'm not taking care of you, he replied. I'm participating in something I care about. There's a difference. Labor began at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks before my due date. The contractions started mild, but quickly intensified, and by 7 a.m. I was in the hospital with Sarah by my side. David arrived shortly after, bringing comfortable pillows from home and snacks for Sarah, then settled into the waiting room to provide support without crowding my space. 26 hours later, Emma Rebecca was born, healthy, perfect, and entirely mine. Holding her for the first time, I felt a completeness I had never experienced before. This tiny person was the reason I had endured everything over the past 9 months. She was worth every moment of uncertainty, every difficult decision, every sleepless night spent planning our future. "She's beautiful," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Look at what you did. Look at what you created." David met Emma when she was 2 hours old, and his reaction was everything I could have hoped for. He didn't try to hold her or insert himself into the moment, but the way he looked at both of us told me everything I needed to know about his character. "She's incredible," he said softly. "You both are." The first few weeks of motherhood were exactly as challenging as everyone had warned me they would be, but also more rewarding than I could have imagined. Emma was a good baby. She slept in reasonable stretches, nursed well, and seemed content most of the time. My work-from-home arrangement allowed me to maintain some income while adjusting to her schedule. Child support payments continued to arrive like clockwork, deposited directly into Emma's account. I used the money for daycare when I needed to take in-person meetings, for baby supplies, and for the college savings fund that was already growing steadily. He was providing financially exactly as the court required, nothing more and nothing less. 3 months after Emma was born, I started receiving occasional texts asking for photos. I consulted my attorney before responding. "You're under no legal obligation to provide pictures or updates," she advised. "If you choose to share information, keep it brief and factual." I decided to send 1 photo per month with a basic update about Emma's development. Not because I felt sorry for him or hoped for reconciliation, but because I wanted Emma to know that I had been fair and reasonable if she ever asked about her father when she was older. "Emma is healthy and meeting all her developmental milestones," I would write alongside a single photo. No response necessary. He never asked to meet her or requested visitation rights. The monthly photos and updates seemed to satisfy whatever parental curiosity he had, while allowing him to maintain the distance he clearly preferred. When Emma was 6 months old, David asked if he could start staying over occasionally to help with night feedings. Our relationship had progressed to the point where this felt natural, and his help was genuinely appreciated during the challenging early months of motherhood. "Are you sure you want to sign up for this?" I asked him one night as he walked the floor with a fussy Emma at 2 a.m. "Dating a single mother isn't exactly what most people plan for." "I'm not dating a single mother," he replied, gently bouncing Emma until she settled. "I'm dating you, and you happen to be a mother. Everything else is just details." By Emma's first birthday, my life had stabilized into something I genuinely loved. I had been promoted again at work, giving me both financial security and the flexibility to be present for all of Emma's important moments. David and I had moved in together, creating a household that felt calm and supportive, rather than dramatic or uncertain. The birthday party I threw for Emma was small but perfect. Close friends, family members who had supported us throughout her first year, and David, who had become an integral part of our daily life. As I watched Emma discover cake for the first time, I thought about the birthday party that had changed everything exactly 2 years earlier. That woman could never have imagined this life. She had been so focused on trying to make someone love her that she had lost sight of her own worth and potential. This version of me didn't need anyone's approval or validation. I had built something beautiful from the wreckage of that public humiliation, and every day proved that his cruelty had been the best thing that ever happened to me. Around Emma's 15-month mark, I stopped sending the monthly photos. He hadn't responded to any of them in over a year, and I realized I was maintaining a connection that served no purpose for anyone involved. The child support continued to arrive automatically, which was all the relationship we needed. David proposed when Emma was 18 months old, in our living room while she played with blocks nearby. The ring was simple and beautiful, and his proposal was everything I had once thought I wanted, but had never actually received from the man who claimed to love me. "I want to adopt her," he said after I said yes. "I want to be her father in every way that matters." The adoption process required attempting to contact Emma's biological father about terminating his parental rights. My attorney sent the required notices to his last known address and published the legal announcements in newspapers as required by law. He had 60 days to respond if he wanted to contest the adoption. He never responded. "This is actually ideal," my attorney explained. "His failure to respond after proper notice allows us to proceed with the adoption. Combined with his complete lack of involvement in Emma's life, the court will almost certainly approve David's petition." The adoption was finalized 3 months before Emma's 2nd birthday. David's name was added to her birth certificate, and he became her legal father in every sense. The biological connection to her original father was legally severed, though the child support obligation remained in place until Emma turned 18. "How does it feel?" David asked as we walked out of the courthouse with the adoption papers. I looked down at Emma, who was babbling happily in her stroller, completely unaware that anything significant had just happened. It feels like we just made official what was already true, I replied. That evening, as I tucked Emma into her crib, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 2.5 years ago, I had been a woman who accepted crumbs of affection from someone who saw her as disposable. Now I was married to a man who had chosen not just me, but my daughter, creating a family based on intention rather than obligation. Emma would grow up knowing that her stepfather had chosen to be her parent, while her biological father had chosen to walk away. She would understand the difference between people who show up and people who disappear when life gets complicated. Most importantly, she would see what healthy love looked like every day in the relationship David and I had built together. The child support payments continued for 16 more years, deposited automatically into Emma's college fund. We never heard from her biological father again. No birthday cards, no Christmas presents, no attempts to reconnect. He had completely removed himself from her life, which turned out to be exactly what was best for all of us. By the time Emma graduated high school, the account contained over $120,000, enough to cover most of her undergraduate education at the state university where she planned to study journalism. The money that had once felt like a reminder of betrayal had transformed into the foundation for her future. He kept his financial obligation, I told Emma, when she asked about her biological father during her senior year of high school. But he chose not to be part of your life in any other way. David chose to be your father because he wanted to be, not because he had to be. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I think I got the better deal, she said simply. Dad actually shows up. During her freshman year of college, Emma wrote an essay for her composition class about family structures. She interviewed me about my experience as a single mother and about David's decision to adopt her. Reading her words about our family was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. My mother could have spent years trying to fix something that was fundamentally broken, she wrote. Instead, she chose to build something new. My father could have walked away when he realized that loving my mother meant also taking responsibility for a child who wasn't biologically his. Instead, he chose to show up every day. I learned that family isn't about biology or convenience. It's about people who choose each other and keep choosing each other, even when it's difficult. She earned an A on that paper, and her professor asked if she would be willing to share it with other students studying non-traditional family structures. Emma agreed, proud to represent the kind of family that chooses love over obligation. During Emma's sophomore year, something unexpected happened. Her biological father attempted to contact her through social media. His message was brief. I know I have no right to reach out, but I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. Emma showed me the message, unsure how to respond. What do you think I should do? What do you want to do? I asked. There's no right or wrong answer here. You get to decide what kind of relationship, if any, you want to have with him. She thought about it for several days before crafting a response. Thank you for reaching out. I'm doing very well. I have a loving family, and I'm studying journalism at State. I appreciate you respecting my boundaries all these years. I hope you're also doing well, but I'm not interested in developing a relationship at this time. His response was immediate and respectful. I understand completely. I'm proud of the young woman you've become, even though I had nothing to do with it. Your mother and father did an incredible job raising you. That was the end of their communication. Emma felt good about handling the situation with maturity and grace, and I was proud of how she had navigated something that could have been very complicated. I'm curious about him, she told me later, but I don't need anything from him. I already have everything I need. When Emma graduated college with honors, both David and I were there cheering loudly from the audience. She had used her degree to land a position at a respected newspaper, covering local politics and community issues. Her first major investigative piece was about single mothers navigating the legal system, inspired partly by her own family's story. You should be proud, David said as we watched Emma accept her diploma. She's incredible. We should be proud, I corrected. You raised her too. Looking back now, 22 years after that devastating birthday party, I can honestly say that being called useless and abandoned while pregnant was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. It forced me to discover my own strength, to build a life based on my own values, and to choose people who chose me back. The man who walked out that night thought he was upgrading to something better. Instead, he gave up the chance to know an incredible daughter and missed watching a woman he had underestimated build a life more fulfilling than anything they could have created together. He became a monthly bank transfer while another man became Emma's real father through daily acts of love and commitment. His loss became my greatest victory, and every single day of my beautiful life is proof that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is actually the best thing in disguise. Emma grew up surrounded by people who chose to be in her life, and she learned that real love is demonstrated through action, not words. I never did find out what happened to Michelle, and I realized I didn't care. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations and satisfying revenge, but the best revenge is simply living well. My revenge was building a life so full of genuine love and authentic success that his absence became completely irrelevant. Emma's biological father remained a footnote in our story, financially responsible but emotionally absent, exactly as he had chosen to be. And that turned out to be perfect, because it meant Emma never had to navigate the confusion of having a parent who was inconsistently present or manipulatively involved. She had David, who showed up to every school play, every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. She had me, who had learned that love means fighting for what matters and walking away from what doesn't. She had a family built on choice and commitment rather than obligation and convenience. The child support payment stopped on Emma's 18th birthday, exactly as scheduled. No fanfare, no communication, just the automatic end of a legal obligation. By then, Emma was already financially independent through scholarships and part-time work, and the college fund we had built from those payments had served its purpose. "Isn't it weird that he'll never have to think about us again?" Emma asked on her 18th birthday, as we celebrated with David and Sarah and the extended family we had built over the years. "He stopped thinking about us a long time ago," I replied, "and that's exactly what allowed us to build all this." I gestured around the room at the people who had chosen to be part of our lives, who had shown up consistently, who had invested in our happiness and success. This was what real family looked like. Not perfect, but present. Not obligated, but committed. That night, as I tucked away the final child support payment and closed the account that had funded 18 years of Emma's expenses, I felt nothing but gratitude. Not for him, but for the journey that had taught me the difference between settling and thriving, between being chosen and being tolerated, between building something authentic and maintaining something false. The woman who had stood in that living room 22 years ago, holding a pregnancy test and planning an announcement that would never come, could never have imagined this ending. She thought she needed someone else to complete her story. She learned instead that she was already complete. She just needed to stop letting other people edit her chapters. Emma's story began with an ending, and it turned out to be the most beautiful beginning any of us could have asked for.